The sun hung low over the horizon, casting a golden hue across the military base as I prepared for deployment. It was a warm afternoon, and the sounds of soldiers gearing up filled the air. Excitement mixed with anxiety thrummed in my veins as I packed the last of my belongings. This was my first deployment, and I was torn between a sense of duty and the nagging worry of leaving my wife, Sarah, behind. We had been married for 3 years, and I had always believed that our love could withstand anything. Our bond felt unbreakable. We had built a life together filled with laughter, shared dreams, and the occasional argument over who forgot to take out the trash. I had faith that Sarah would hold things together while I was away, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was looming beneath the surface. As I zipped up my duffel bag, I glanced at the photo of us from our honeymoon, grinning widely as we posed on the beach. I couldn't help but think back to how everything had changed since then. The routine of everyday life had gradually turned mundane, and sometimes I wondered if the sparkle had faded from our relationship. "Hey, babe. You ready?" Sarah's voice pulled me from my thoughts. She entered the room, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, and a smile that momentarily eased my worries. I noticed the slight tremor in her hands as she folded a pair of my fatigues, but I chalked it up to the nerves of impending separation. "Just about," I replied, forcing a grin. "You sure you'll be okay while I'm gone?" She hesitated, her smile wavering for just a moment. "Of course. I'll keep busy. You know how much I love my job." Her voice was steady, but I couldn't help but feel a pang of uncertainty. Sarah worked as a nurse, and I knew she would be busy, but part of me wanted to keep her close. "I just wish I could take you with me," I said, wrapping my arms around her waist and pulling her close. "I don't like the thought of being apart for so long." "I'll be right here waiting for you," she promised, her eyes meeting mine with a mix of sincerity and something I couldn't quite identify. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange, I found solace in her words. I had always been the protector, the one who would keep her safe from harm. But as I boarded the bus that would take me to the airfield, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was leaving her vulnerable in a way I had never experienced before. The first few weeks of deployment were a whirlwind of activity. I found myself engrossed in training exercises and missions, the adrenaline often drowning out the worry that lingered at the back of my mind. I called Sarah as often as I could, and each time she answered, I felt a sense of normalcy return, if only for a moment. But as the days turned into weeks, I started to notice something was off. Our conversations, once filled with excitement and affection, began to feel strained. She seemed distracted, and I caught her off guard a few times when I asked her about her day. She would stumble over her words, offering vague answers and changing the subject quickly. "Are you sure everything's okay?" I asked one night, my heart racing with unease. "Yeah, of course. Just busy with work and everything," she replied, her voice a little too high, her laughter a little too forced. I tried to push the thoughts aside, but doubt began to creep in. I wanted to trust her, but the distance made it difficult. I started to imagine all the things that could go wrong while I was away. Friends, loneliness, and the ever-looming presence of temptation. Then one night, as I lay on my cot, staring at the ceiling and listening to the sounds of my fellow soldiers sleeping, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a text from Sarah. My heart raced with anticipation, hoping for a sweet message. Instead, I found myself staring at a picture, a selfie of her smiling, but it was the caption that made my stomach drop. "Miss you, but I'm keeping busy. Hope you're safe. Red heart." The words felt hollow, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something beneath the surface. Something I wasn't seeing. As I drifted off to sleep, my mind was a storm of emotions. I wanted to believe in our love, to trust that we would come out of this stronger, but the seeds of doubt had been planted, and I feared they would grow into something I wouldn't be able to control. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would test the very foundations of our marriage. Chapter 2, Cracks in the Foundation. The following weeks dragged on, each day blurring into the next. I threw myself into my duties, trying to ignore the unsettling feeling gnawing at my gut. Each time I spoke with Sarah, I listened for hints of the woman I had married, the one who had filled my life with joy and laughter. But with each call, the connection felt increasingly strained, as if there were an invisible wall growing between us. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of training, I stepped out into the cool night air, hoping to clear my mind. The stars twinkled brightly overhead, and for a moment, I let myself remember happier times. But even as I recalled those memories, a sense of foreboding settled over me. I pulled my phone from my pocket, the urge to text Sarah overwhelming. I love you. I miss you. Are you sure everything is okay? I hit send and stared at the screen, waiting for a reply. The anticipation was both thrilling and terrifying. My phone buzzed a few minutes later, but instead of the reassurance I craved, I found myself staring at a reply that felt evasive. I love you too. Just busy with work and hanging out with friends. Hanging out with friends. I thought, a spike of anxiety shooting through me. The words seemed harmless enough, but I couldn't shake the worry that had taken root in my mind. As the weeks wore on, I couldn't help but wonder who these friends were. I knew Sarah had a few close pals, but it felt like she was avoiding me, almost as if she were trying to distract herself from my absence. Every time I called, she seemed preoccupied, her laughter less genuine, her words more rehearsed. The final straw came on a night when I called her to share something I thought would make her smile. I got a care package from Mom today. She sent cookies and that book you wanted to read, I said, my voice bubbling with excitement. That's great, she replied, but her tone was flat, lacking the enthusiasm I had hoped for. Are you okay? I asked, concern creeping into my voice. You seem off. I'm fine. Just tired, she snapped, and then immediately backpedaled. Sorry, I didn't mean to snap. It's just been a long week. Do you want to talk about it? No, really. It's nothing. Just. I'll be fine. I promise. I felt a chill run down my spine as she said those words. Her insistence felt like a red flag waving in the wind, and I couldn't ignore it. That night, I tossed and turned in my cot, my mind racing. I reached for my phone and began scrolling through our texts, searching for any sign that I had missed. I needed to find some shred of comfort, something to anchor me to the love we had built. But all I found were gaps in her stories about her days, inconsistencies in what she had said. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something from me. As the days continued to blur, I began to notice small changes in my interactions with my fellow soldiers. One of my closest friends, Jake, had been deployed with me, and he could see the toll this was taking on me. Dude, you need to focus on the mission. Worrying about your wife isn't going to help anything, he advised one night as we sat outside the barracks, sharing a beer. You can't control what happens back home. I know, but I just can't shake this feeling that something's wrong, I confessed. Jake nodded sympathetically. I get it. But if she's not reaching out to you about it, maybe it's nothing. Sometimes, people just need to cope in their own ways. But his words did little to ease my mind. A few days later, I received a call from my mother. Honey, I wanted to check in on you. How's everything going? I hesitated, unsure of what to say. It's going okay, I guess. Just keeping busy. She paused. And Sarah? Is she doing all right? I swallowed hard. Yeah, she's keeping busy, too. Mom's voice turned serious. You know, I've been hearing some things from your sister. She's worried about Sarah. I just want you to be careful, honey. I felt a cold sweat break out on my brow. What do you mean? Just that she's been out more than usual, hanging out with friends. You know how it is when you're gone, sometimes people can get lonely. Yeah, I know, I replied, my heart racing. But she said she's fine. She promised. Just, keep an eye on things when you get back, okay? I love you. I love you too, Mom. As I hung up, the weight of my mother's words settled heavily on my chest. I felt like I was losing control over everything, and the anxiety of the unknown was starting to consume me. A few days later, during a rare quiet moment, I confided in Jake. What if Sarah isn't being honest with me? I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. He raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I mean, what if she's seeing someone else? I can't shake the feeling that something is off, I said, the words spilling out in a rush. Bro, don't jump to conclusions. That's a big accusation, he warned. I know, but I can't help it. The way she talks to me feels different. Like she's hiding something. Jake considered this for a moment, then sighed. You need to focus on what you can control. Trust me, you're going to drive yourself crazy worrying about it. But as hard as I tried, I couldn't silence the whispers of doubt creeping into my mind. Each day felt like a slow unraveling, and with each passing moment, the chasm between Sarah and me widened. I knew I had to do something, but what? I was miles away, and the very thought of facing the truth made me sick. I just wanted to believe in our love, but the distance was testing the very foundations of our marriage, and I could feel the cracks deepening. Little did I know, the truth was waiting for me, and when it finally revealed itself, it would shatter everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and the woman I had vowed to cherish for better or worse. Chapter 3, The Shocking Revelation. Days turned into weeks, and the gnawing unease only grew stronger. I tried to focus on my work, but the thought of Sarah's silence haunted me. I found myself daydreaming during training exercises, my mind wandering to thoughts of her laughter and our moments together. The more I reminisced, the more I felt the weight of her absence, like a heavy stone lodged in my chest. One evening, after a particularly taxing day, I found myself scrolling through social media to distract myself. As I flicked through photos of friends and family, I stumbled upon a picture that made my heart stop. It was a photo of Sarah, and she was smiling broadly, her arms wrapped around a man I didn't recognize. They were at a bar, drinks in hand, laughter frozen in time. My stomach twisted as I stared at the image. I quickly clicked through her tagged photos, searching for context. The man in the photo was part of a group of friends I hadn't seen before. My mind raced with questions. Who was he? Why hadn't she mentioned him? I felt my heart pounding in my chest as I began to scroll further. There were more photos her at different bars, laughing, dancing, seemingly having the time of her life. The carefree joy in her eyes contrasted sharply with the anxiety I felt. Suddenly, I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. My hands shook as I picked up my phone to call her, but I stopped short. What would I even say? I could already hear the excuses lined up in her mind, ready to defend what I feared was a betrayal. Instead, I decided to text her. I saw the pictures. Who is the guy? I pressed send and sat back, heart racing. I stared at the screen, waiting for a response. Time felt like it stood still. Minutes turned into an eternity as I fought the urge to panic. Finally, my phone buzzed. What are you talking about? I don't know what you mean. My blood boiled. Don't play games, Sarah. I saw you. You're out with some guy, and you didn't even mention him. It's just a friend. We were having drinks after a long shift, nothing more. You're being ridiculous. I could feel the frustration boiling over. You're not being honest with me. You've changed, and I can't ignore it any longer. She didn't respond immediately, and I was left with a sense of dread as the silence stretched on. Finally, she replied. You don't get it? You're not here, and I'm trying to cope. I miss you. The emotional weight of her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Then why didn't you tell me? Why is it that I hear about everything else, but this? It feels like you're pushing me away. After what felt like an eternity, Sarah finally texted back. I can't do this right now. I need some space. I felt like I had been slapped. The words stung, and the realization hit me like a freight train. She was pulling away from me, and I had no control over it. I paced my small living quarters, frustration and helplessness bubbling to the surface. With the weight of my worry threatening to crush me, I reached out to Jake again, desperate for some clarity. We met in a quieter part of the base, the sound of distant training exercises filling the air. I need your help, I said, my voice shaking. I found some pictures of Sarah with another guy, and she's saying it's nothing, but I can't shake this feeling that something's wrong. Jake frowned, crossing his arms. Are you sure it's more than just friends? You're not there, man. It's easy to misinterpret things from a distance. I wish I could believe that, I replied, shaking my head. But she's been distant, and now I find out she's out with some guy. Okay, let's think logically about this. Have you considered talking to her face to face? Maybe there's an explanation you're not seeing, he suggested, his brow furrowed in thought. I nodded slowly, realizing he was right. But the idea of facing her after all this felt daunting. What if she denied everything? What if she made it worse? I don't know if I can do that, I admitted. What if I find out something I don't want to know? Jake placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You can't live in uncertainty. You deserve to know the truth. You're strong enough to handle whatever comes your way. The following night, I stood alone under the stars, wrestling with my decision. The air was thick with tension, and I felt like I was teetering on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap into the unknown. Finally, I decided to take the plunge. I called Sarah, my heart racing as the phone rang. She answered, and I could hear the hesitance in her voice. Hey, she said softly. Hey, I replied, taking a deep breath. We need to talk. Can you meet me somewhere? A place where we can be alone. Is this about the pictures? Yeah. I need to see you, face to face. Okay. How about that coffee shop we love? I agreed, my heart pounding as I hung up the phone. I arrived at the cafe early, nerves coursing through me as I waited for her to arrive. Each passing minute felt like an eternity, and I wrestled with the anxiety swelling inside me. When she finally walked in, I noticed how beautiful she looked, even with the worry etched on her face. But beneath that beauty lay a tension that I could feel even from across the room. Hey, she said, approaching the table. Hey, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our unspoken words heavy between us. Listen, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I need to know what's going on, I finally said, my voice firm but laced with concern. I saw the pictures. I want you to be honest with me. Her expression shifted, a flicker of something dark crossing her face. I was just trying to have some fun, to take my mind off things. It was a rough time, and you being gone. I thought you would understand. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Fun? With another guy? Sarah, it's not just that. It feels like you've been hiding things from me. I haven't been hiding anything. I swear, it was just a few drinks, she insisted, her voice rising. But it doesn't feel that way. You're saying it's nothing, but I feel like I don't know you anymore. I'm worried about us. Her eyes filled with tears, and my heart ached at the sight. I miss you too. I'm lonely. I just wanted to feel normal for a moment. Is that all it was? I pressed, desperation creeping into my voice. What about that guy? Is he just a friend? Sarah's silence spoke volumes, and I felt a sickening realization wash over me. The truth hung heavy in the air between us, unspoken and terrifying. As the minutes stretched on, it became painfully clear that this conversation was about more than just distance. It was about trust, betrayal, and the looming question of whether our love could survive the storm that had brewed in my absence. And in that moment, I understood, the truth was much darker than I had ever anticipated. Chapter 4, The Unraveling. The cafe buzzed with the sounds of laughter and clinking cups, but in our corner, a silence settled that felt almost suffocating. I searched Sarah's face for answers, but the confusion and fear in her eyes only deepened my sense of dread. Just tell me, I urged, my voice barely a whisper. What's going on with you and this guy? I need to know if I can trust you. I didn't mean for it to happen, she finally confessed, her voice trembling. We were just hanging out after work. I felt so alone, and he was there, you know? He listened to me. As her words hung in the air, I felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath me. So you did see him? It's more than just drinks. She took a deep breath, her gaze shifting to the table as if she were searching for the right words. Yes, we hung out a few times. But I swear nothing physical happened. It was just. Just what? I interrupted, my anger flaring. Just emotional support? You think that's okay? I'm thousands of miles away, and instead of talking to me, you turned to him. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and I felt my heart crack at the sight. I was lonely, and I just needed someone to talk to. I thought it was harmless. Harmless? I echoed incredulously. You think it's harmless to form a bond with another guy while I'm out here risking my life? Sarah, that's not fair to me or to our marriage. I know, she shouted, the desperation in her voice rising. I made a mistake. I didn't think it would go this far, but it's not what you think. I didn't cheat. I promise. Did you kiss him? I asked, my throat tight with emotion. She hesitated, her eyes darting away as if avoiding my gaze. We kissed once. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake. I love you, I do. The words sliced through me, each syllable heavy with betrayal. I felt as if I had been punched in the gut, the air rushing from my lungs. You kissed him, Sarah. How can you say you love me when you did that? I don't know. I messed up, and I can't take it back, she cried, her voice breaking. But I've been thinking about you every day. I want us to work through this. Work through this. I repeated, my mind racing. How can I trust you again after this? You're telling me you felt lonely, but I'm the one who's been left alone for weeks on end. I thought we were a team. Her eyes searched mine, desperation etched across her features. We are. I never wanted to hurt you, but I didn't know how to cope without you. I thought about you every time I was with him, and I realized how much I needed you. I shook my head, my heart heavy with disappointment. But it's too late for that now. You had a choice, Sarah. You could have reached out to me. Instead, you turned to someone else. And now, I'm here, questioning everything we built. Silence enveloped us once more, the weight of the moment heavy on my shoulders. I could see the pain in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. I had trusted her completely, and she had shattered that trust in an instant. Do you even understand what you've done? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You let someone else into our life, into our marriage. And for what? A few moments of distraction. I was weak, she admitted, her voice choked with emotion. But I don't want to lose you. Please, let's go to couples therapy. Let's try to fix this. The desperation in her voice tugged at my heart, but I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure if I wanted to jump or retreat. I don't know if I can do that. I need time to think. I can't just forgive you and forget. I understand, she replied, her voice barely a whisper. Just, please don't give up on me. I nodded slowly, feeling a mix of emotions crashing over me. I wanted to believe her, to hold on to the love we had once shared, but doubt loomed large in my mind. As we left the cafe, the cool air felt sharp against my skin. I knew I had to make a choice, but the weight of that decision felt overwhelming. I was torn between the love I still felt for Sarah and the betrayal that now clouded my heart. Back at the base, I tried to bury myself in my work, but I found it impossible to concentrate. Each task felt like a blur as my thoughts kept returning to our conversation. I replayed every moment in my mind, searching for signs I might have missed. Late that night, after another exhausting day, I received a text from Sarah. I miss you. Please call when you can. I stared at the screen, the tension in my chest returning. It felt wrong to ignore her, but how could I face her without the weight of betrayal hanging over us? I needed clarity. After a restless night, I decided to call my sister, Emma, seeking comfort and advice. She had always been my confidant, and I needed a fresh perspective. When she answered, her voice was warm and inviting. Hey, big brother. How's it going? Not great, Em. Can we talk? Of course. What's up? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. It's about Sarah. I found out she's been hanging out with another guy while I've been deployed, and things got out of hand. There was a moment of silence before Emma responded. I'm so sorry, Alex. That sounds terrible. Are you okay? I don't know. I feel like everything I thought I knew about our marriage is crumbling. She says nothing happened, but I can't help but feel betrayed. Did you two ever talk about what would happen while you were gone? Not really. I assumed we would both stay faithful, but I guess that was naive of me, I admitted, feeling vulnerable. Emma sighed softly. It's hard being away from each other. But it sounds like she's willing to try to make things work. Have you thought about giving her that chance? I paused, weighing her words. I want to, but I'm scared. I don't know if I can fully trust her again. That's understandable, she replied gently. But maybe you could take baby steps? Talk more openly about how you both feel and see if it helps rebuild that trust. Maybe, I said, uncertainty still swirling in my mind. Just remember, no one's perfect. People make mistakes. It's how they handle those mistakes that matters, she added. Her words resonated with me, and for the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. I knew I had to face Sarah again, not just to confront her about what had happened, but to understand why it had happened in the first place. As I hung up, I felt a newfound determination. I would give her a chance to explain herself further, but I would also be honest about my own feelings. Our love was worth fighting for, but only if both of us were willing to put in the work. Little did I know, this confrontation would lead to a series of revelations that would test our love even further and force us both to confront the deeper issues lurking beneath the surface of our relationship. Chapter 5, Confrontation and Confessions. The following evening, I met Sarah at a small park near the base, a quiet place where we could talk without distractions. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over everything, but the beauty of the moment did little to ease the tension in my chest. As I waited, I replayed our last conversation in my mind, trying to sort through my emotions. I felt a mixture of anger, betrayal, and an undeniable longing for the love we had once shared. When Sarah arrived, her eyes were red from crying, and the sight tugged at my heart. She looked vulnerable, and for a moment, I was reminded of the woman I fell in love with. But that warmth was quickly overshadowed by the reality of her actions. "Hey," she said softly, her voice trembling as she approached. "Hey," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. We settled on a bench, the silence stretching between us like an unbridgeable chasm. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "We need to talk about what happened," I said finally, my voice steady. "I know," she replied, her gaze fixed on the ground. "I've been thinking about it non-stop. I'm so sorry for everything, Alex. I never meant to hurt you. I need you to be honest with me, Sarah." "No more half-truths," I said, locking eyes with her. "Did anything physical happen between you and this guy?" Her eyes filled with tears again, and she shook her head vehemently. "No. I swear, nothing happened beyond that one kiss. It was a moment of weakness, and I regret it more than anything. But I can see how it looks, and I'm so sorry." I clenched my fists, the pain of her betrayal still fresh. "You say it was a moment of weakness, but it felt like a choice. You could have called me, talked to me about how you were feeling. Instead, you went to him." "I know. I was just so lonely and overwhelmed. I thought I could handle it, but I was wrong," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I wanted to feel something normal again. But being with him made me realize how much I truly love you. Then why didn't you just talk to me?" I pressed, frustration bubbling to the surface. "We promised to communicate, to be there for each other, no matter what. I didn't want to burden you while you were out there," she said, desperation creeping into her tone. "I thought I could be strong enough to handle it on my own. But it spiraled out of control." I rubbed my temples, trying to process everything. "I get that it's hard, but that doesn't excuse what you did. Trust is everything in a relationship, and you broke that." "I know," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness right now. I just want you to understand how deeply I regret it. I want to work through this, but I know it's going to take time." Her vulnerability struck a chord within me, and I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to crack. But I couldn't ignore the pain. "What if I can't trust you again? Then I'll do everything I can to prove to you that I'm worth trusting," she said, her voice steady despite her tears. "I love you, Alex. I've always loved you, and I never wanted to jeopardize what we have. I was scared and made a mistake." The sincerity in her voice stirred something inside me, and for a moment, I thought back to all the times we had laughed together, the dreams we had shared. But I also recalled the crushing disappointment of betrayal. "I don't know if I can forget this," I admitted. "It's going to take time." "I understand," she replied, her eyes pleading. "Just don't give up on us. I want to fight for you, for our marriage." We sat in silence, the weight of our conversation hanging heavily in the air. I wanted to believe her, to hold on to the hope that we could work through this together, but doubt still loomed in my mind. "What can I do to help?" she asked, her voice softening. "Be honest," I replied. "If there's anything else you've been hiding, I need to know now. I can't go into this thinking there are more secrets." "I swear, that's it?" "There's nothing else," she insisted, her eyes wide with sincerity. "I promise I'll be transparent moving forward. I won't keep anything from you again." I nodded slowly, my heart still heavy. "And I need you to understand that I'll be cautious. Trust won't be rebuilt overnight." "I know," she said, reaching for my hand. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes." As we sat there, our fingers intertwined, I felt a flicker of hope. But that hope was fragile, balanced precariously on the edge of uncertainty. I knew the road ahead would be long and challenging, filled with hard conversations and deep emotional work. Eventually, we left the park, the sun now set and the sky painted in hues of deep blue and indigo. I felt a sense of unease still lingering, but there was also a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could begin to rebuild what had been broken. As the days turned into weeks, we found ourselves in a routine of honest communication. We talked late into the night, sharing our fears and vulnerabilities. Sarah started attending therapy sessions to work on her own issues, and I began to see a therapist as well, hoping to process my feelings of betrayal and learn how to trust again. But even as we took these steps, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to uncover. One afternoon, as I sat in my barracks, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Can we talk? There's something I need to share." My stomach dropped, and I felt the familiar knot of anxiety tighten within me. "What is it?" I typed back, my heart racing. "It's about the guy I kissed. I think I might have seen him again. We need to discuss it." The weight of her message crashed down on me like a tidal wave, and I knew, deep down, that this revelation could shatter everything we had worked for. As I read her words again, dread pooled in my stomach, and I realized this conversation would change everything once more. Chapter 6, A New Threat. The moment I received Sarah's message, panic washed over me like a cold wave. My mind raced with questions. What did she mean by "saw him again"? Had she been in contact with the guy? Was this the moment everything we'd been working on would unravel? I replied, my fingers trembling over the screen. When and where? A few moments passed, but it felt like an eternity. Finally, she responded. "Can we meet at our usual place? I'll explain everything. Please." As I drove to the cafe, the familiar route felt like a journey into the unknown. Each passing moment intensified the anxiety gripping my heart. I thought about how hard we had fought to get back to a semblance of normalcy, only to find ourselves on the brink of another crisis. When I arrived, I spotted Sarah sitting at a table, her expression a mix of apprehension and sadness. The sight of her stirred conflicting emotions within me. I had wanted to trust her, but now I was unsure whether I should brace myself for another betrayal. "Hey," I said as I approached the table, my voice guarded. "Hey," she replied, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. We sat in silence for a moment, the tension in the air palpable. I leaned forward, trying to read her face. "What's going on?" I urged, needing her to break the suffocating quiet. "I ran into him last week," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't expect it at all. I was out with some friends, and he was there." My heart sank. "And what happened? Did you talk to him?" "Only for a moment. He came up to me, and we exchanged a few words. I told him I was happily married, and that was it. I swear. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I pressed, frustration creeping back into my voice. "I didn't want to worry you," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I thought it was a one-time thing, but then I realized I should have been honest. I should have told you right away." "Should have," I repeated, feeling the heat rise in my chest. "That's not good enough, Sarah. You're still keeping things from me. How am I supposed to trust you if you're not fully open?" "I know. I'm sorry. I just didn't want to complicate things more than they already are. I thought it wouldn't matter because I didn't feel anything for him, but I see now how it looks," she pleaded, her eyes desperate for understanding. I took a deep breath, trying to rein in my anger. "So you still have his number? What if he tries to contact you again?" "I blocked him after I saw him. I don't want anything to do with him. I just want to focus on us," she insisted, leaning forward in earnest. I studied her face, looking for any signs of deception, but all I saw was fear. "I don't know, Sarah. This is all so messy. I'm trying to work on trusting you again, but it feels like every time I take a step forward, I'm pushed 2 steps back. I understand, she said, her voice shaking. But I promise you, I'm committed to making this work. I'm doing everything I can to prove it to you. I sighed, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. It's going to take more than just promises. We need to set boundaries, and you need to be transparent about everything. I can't handle any more secrets. She nodded, her expression resolute. Absolutely. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I know I've messed up, but I love you, and I don't want to lose you. Her words touched something deep inside me, but doubt lingered in the back of my mind. We both have a lot of work to do, I finally said, my voice steady. I'm willing to try, but I need you to meet me halfway. I will, she promised, wiping her tears away. I'm ready to do this right. As we left the cafe, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me again. Maybe we could find a way back to each other, but I knew we had to tread carefully. The following weeks were filled with intense discussions, therapy sessions, and moments of vulnerability that pushed both of us to confront the root of our issues. Sarah began to open up about her feelings of isolation while I was deployed, and I shared my struggles with feeling disconnected and powerless from afar. Yet, despite our efforts, the shadow of betrayal still lingered. I found myself second-guessing her every action, replaying moments in my mind where I felt a hint of distance between us. One night, after another long day of therapy, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Sarah had gone to visit her parents for the weekend, a decision I had supported, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Suddenly, my phone buzzed beside me. It was a text from Jake. "Hey, man. Got some news you might want to hear." Curiosity piqued, I replied, "What is it?" He took a moment to respond. "I saw Sarah out last night with some friends. She looked fine, but I noticed she was with that guy, the one she kissed. Thought you should know." My heart dropped, anger and betrayal flooding my system. I typed back, "You're sure?" "Yeah, pretty sure." I didn't want to say anything unless I was sure. But I couldn't keep it to myself. My hands shook as I put the phone down. Why would she go out with him again? I felt the familiar pain of betrayal clawing at my heart, and I knew I had to confront her about it. After tossing and turning all night, I decided to call Sarah the next day. When she picked up, I tried to keep my voice steady. "Hey, can we talk?" "Of course, what's wrong?" she asked, sounding cheerful. "Did you go out last night?" There was a pause, and I could almost hear the gears turning in her mind. "Yeah, I went out with some friends." "Why?" "I heard you were with that guy, the one you kissed." I could hear her breath hitch on the other end of the line. "I swear, Alex, I didn't mean to. It was just a coincidence. I was with a group of people, and he happened to be there." "Are you kidding me?" I shot back, my anger boiling over. "You told me you blocked him. Why are you still allowing him into your life?" "I didn't invite him, I promise. It was just a gathering. I didn't think it was a big deal." "Not a big deal," I shouted, my voice echoing in the empty room. "You've got to be kidding me. This is a huge deal. You're still making choices that show me I can't trust you." "Alex, please. Just let me explain," she pleaded. "Explain what?" I interrupted, my heart racing. "That you've lied to me again? That you keep putting yourself in situations that jeopardize our marriage?" "I'm not trying to jeopardize anything. I promise. I didn't think he would even approach me. I swear." "Maybe you didn't think, but that's the problem, Sarah," I yelled, frustration spilling over. "You're making choices that affect us both, and I can't be in a relationship where I constantly worry about who you're spending time with. I'm sorry. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again." Please, don't do this. But my resolve was crumbling. I don't know if I can do this anymore. I feel like I'm fighting an uphill battle just to keep this relationship alive. Alex, don't say that. I love you. I'm trying, she cried, desperation in her voice. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of our situation pressing down on me. I need some space. I can't keep going like this. Wait, please don't hang up. I'm willing to do anything, she begged, but I couldn't listen anymore. I ended the call, feeling hollow and defeated. The trust one had been trying to rebuild felt more fragile than ever, and I knew we were at a breaking point. I had to decide if I could continue fighting for our love or if it was time to let go. As I paced my room, I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, unsure which path to take. One road led to pain, doubt, and constant second-guessing, the other offered the unknown, perhaps a fresh start, perhaps a chance to heal. But as I weighed my options, I realized that one thing was clear: I needed to protect my heart, no matter the cost. Chapter 7, The Breaking Point. The next few days passed in a blur. I threw myself into work, trying to keep my mind occupied, but it felt like I was walking through a fog. Each time my phone buzzed, I half hoped it was Sarah, ready to make things right. But when her messages came, they were met with silence. I needed space, but every message was a reminder of what we had lost. One evening, while sitting in the common area of the barracks, Jake approached me. He could see the storm brewing behind my eyes. "You okay, man? You been out of it lately," he said, taking a seat next to me. I forced a smile. "Just dealing with some stuff." "About Sarah?" he asked, and I nodded. "She keeps finding ways to make things worse. I don't know if I can keep doing this." "Look, I don't want to interfere, but you deserve better than what she's putting you through," Jake said, his voice low. "You've been a good husband. You shouldn't have to worry about her being with another guy." "I know. I thought she understood that we're in this together," I replied, frustration bubbling to the surface. "I thought we were working through our issues." "Sounds like she's not taking your feelings seriously," he said, leaning back. "You need to protect yourself." His words hit home. "What do I do if I can't trust her anymore?" I asked, feeling the weight of my situation crushing down on me. "You need to put yourself first. If you feel like she's not committed to making things right, maybe it's time to reevaluate the relationship," Jake suggested. I knew he was right. I'd been struggling with the same thoughts, but hearing it from someone else made it feel real. "I just don't want to throw everything away without giving it a fair shot," I said, voice thick with uncertainty. "Sometimes a fair shot isn't enough. You can't fix something if the other person isn't willing to change," Jake replied, his tone firm. As I left the barracks that night, I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. I needed to talk to Sarah again, to confront the reality of our situation. Maybe it was time to lay all our cards on the table, no more secrets or half-truths. The following weekend, when Sarah returned from visiting her parents, I invited her to meet at the park again. This time, the air was heavy with unresolved tension, and as I watched her approach, I steeled myself for the conversation ahead. "Hi," she said softly, her eyes searching mine for answers. "Hey," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. We sat on the same bench where we'd talked before, but it felt like a world apart. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I began, my heart racing. "About us, about what happened, and where we go from here." Her face paled slightly. "Okay, what did you decide?" "I don't know how to say this without sounding harsh, but I feel like I'm constantly living in a state of doubt. Every time I try to trust you, something comes up that tears it down," I said, my voice trembling. "I get that, and I'm so sorry," she replied, reaching for my hand. "I never meant to hurt you." I've been working on myself and trying to be better. I see that, I said, squeezing her hand, but I felt the weight of my doubts. But it's not just about you anymore. It's about us. You went out with him, Sarah. That's the second time, and I can't shake the feeling that it will happen again. I promise it was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. I thought I could just avoid him, and it would be fine, she pleaded, her eyes wide with desperation. I shook my head, my heart heavy. It feels like every time I try to give you the benefit of the doubt, you find a way to put us at risk again. I can't keep doing this if it's just going to end in more pain. Her expression shifted to one of anguish. So what are you saying? That you want to end this? I'm saying that I need to know if you're committed to making this work, I said, my voice firm. Are you willing to cut ties with him completely? Are you ready to put in the effort to rebuild what we had? She looked away, tears spilling down her cheeks. Yes, of course. I don't want him. I want you. But I need you to believe that. I want to believe it, but it's hard when you keep making choices that contradict that, I replied, my voice strained. I can't promise I'll be able to just forget everything that's happened. I need you to be upfront with me from now on, no matter how hard it is. I will, she said, her voice breaking. I swear. I'll cut him off completely. I'll do anything it takes. Then let's start with that, I said, my heart heavy but hopeful. We need to put this on the table and address it together. If you're serious about wanting to make this work, we need to establish boundaries. Absolutely, she said, her eyes pleading. I don't want to lose you, Alex. You mean everything to me. Then let's make this work together, but I need to see the commitment in your actions, I replied, trying to keep my resolve steady. I promise I'll show you, she said, her eyes searching mine for sincerity. As we sat there, a fragile truce formed between us, but I couldn't shake the fear that it could all come crashing down again. I wanted to believe in us, to believe that we could heal, but the road ahead was uncertain, and the stakes had never felt higher. The following week was a mix of unease and hope. Sarah started reaching out to her therapist regularly, and I did my best to support her while also focusing on my own healing process. Yet, despite our efforts, a shadow loomed over our relationship, a constant reminder of the betrayal. One evening, after a long day of work, I decided to take a walk to clear my mind. The crisp air felt refreshing against my skin, and for a moment, I thought I could push aside my worries. But as I strolled through the park, I spotted a familiar figure in the distance. It was Sarah, laughing and talking with a group of friends. But there, standing beside her, was that guy, the one who had kissed her. My heart dropped into my stomach, and the familiar wave of anger and betrayal crashed over me. How could she say she was committed to making things work if she was still allowing him into her life? I approached them, my footsteps heavy with dread. As I got closer, Sarah's laughter faded, and her smile vanished when she spotted me. Alex, she exclaimed, her voice a mix of surprise and guilt. Can we talk? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but I felt the storm brewing within me. Of course, she replied, her expression changing to one of concern. I pulled her aside, away from the group, my heart racing. What the hell, Sarah? I thought you were cutting him off. He's just a friend, she said, her voice shaking. But you promised. I shot back, anger rising in my chest. How can you say you're committed to us when you're still hanging out with him? This doesn't feel like you're taking this seriously. I didn't invite him. He just happened to show up, she insisted, desperation evident in her voice. I was trying to be social, to move on. Move on? This isn't moving on, Sarah. This is the exact opposite of what we agreed on. Tears filled her eyes, and I could see the panic rising. I didn't mean for this to happen. I swear. Then why can't you just avoid him? Why are you still putting yourself in these situations? I pressed, my heart pounding. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could show you that I'm okay being around him without it meaning anything. Clearly, you can't handle it. I yelled, my voice echoing in the quiet park. This is why I'm struggling to trust you. You keep testing my limits. I'm sorry. I'm trying, she pleaded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I never wanted to hurt you again. The reality of our situation settled over us like a dark cloud. I felt the weight of our struggles crushing me, and in that moment, I realized I couldn't keep fighting this battle. The trust one had hoped to rebuild felt like it was slipping away again. I can't keep doing this, I said, my voice breaking. I don't know if I can keep trying to make this work when it feels like you're not taking it seriously. Please don't say that, she begged, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away, the ache in my heart raw. I need to think, I said, turning away, the finality of my words hanging heavy in the air. As I walked away from her, I felt like I was leaving a piece of my heart behind. The darkness was closing in, and I knew it was time to face the truth. I had to decide if I could #Chapter 7, the breaking point. The next few days passed in a blur. I threw myself into work, trying to keep my mind occupied, but it felt like I was walking through a fog. Each time my phone buzzed, I half hoped it was Sarah, ready to make things right. But when her messages came, they were met with silence. I needed space, but every message was a reminder of what we had lost. One evening, while sitting in the common area of the barracks, Jake approached me. He could see the storm brewing behind my eyes. "You okay, man? You been out of it lately," he said, taking a seat next to me. I forced a smile. "Just dealing with some stuff." "About Sarah?" he asked, and I nodded. "She keeps finding ways to make things worse. I don't know if I can keep doing this." "Look, I don't want to interfere, but you deserve better than what she's putting you through," Jake said, his voice low. "You've been a good husband. You shouldn't have to worry about her being with another guy." "I know. I thought she understood that we're in this together," I replied, frustration bubbling to the surface. "I thought we were working through our issues." "Sounds like she's not taking your feelings seriously," he said, leaning back. "You need to protect yourself." His words hit home. "What do I do if I can't trust her anymore?" I asked, feeling the weight of my situation crushing down on me. "You need to put yourself first. If you feel like she's not committed to making things right, maybe it's time to reevaluate the relationship," Jake suggested. I knew he was right. I'd been struggling with the same thoughts, but hearing it from someone else made it feel real. "I just don't want to throw everything away without giving it a fair shot," I said, voice thick with uncertainty. "Sometimes a fair shot isn't enough. You can't fix something if the other person isn't willing to change," Jake replied, his tone firm. As I left the barracks that night, I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. I needed to talk to Sarah again, to confront the reality of our situation. Maybe it was time to lay all our cards on the table, no more secrets or half-truths. The following weekend, when Sarah returned from visiting her parents, I invited her to meet at the park again. This time, the air was heavy with unresolved tension, and as I watched her approach, I steeled myself for the conversation ahead. "Hi," she said softly, her eyes searching mine for answers. "Hey," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. We sat on the same bench where we'd talked before, but it felt like a world apart. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I began, my heart racing. "About us, about what happened, and where we go from here." Her face paled slightly. "Okay, what did you decide?" I don't know how to say this without sounding harsh, but I feel like I'm constantly living in a state of doubt. Every time I try to trust you, something comes up that tears it down, I said, my voice trembling. I get that, and I'm so sorry, she replied, reaching for my hand. I never meant to hurt you. I've been working on myself and trying to be better. I see that, I said, squeezing her hand, but I felt the weight of my doubts. But it's not just about you anymore. It's about us. You went out with him, Sarah. That's the second time, and I can't shake the feeling that it will happen again. I promise it was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. I thought I could just avoid him, and it would be fine, she pleaded, her eyes wide with desperation. I shook my head, my heart heavy. It feels like every time I try to give you the benefit of the doubt, you find a way to put us at risk again. I can't keep doing this if it's just going to end in more pain. Her expression shifted to one of anguish. So what are you saying? That you want to end this? I'm saying that I need to know if you're committed to making this work, I said, my voice firm. Are you willing to cut ties with him completely? Are you ready to put in the effort to rebuild what we had? She looked away, tears spilling down her cheeks. Yes, of course. I don't want him. I want you. But I need you to believe that. I want to believe it, but it's hard when you keep making choices that contradict that, I replied, my voice strained. I can't promise I'll be able to just forget everything that's happened. I need you to be upfront with me from now on, no matter how hard it is. I will, she said, her voice breaking. I swear. I'll cut him off completely. I'll do anything it takes. Then let's start with that, I said, my heart heavy but hopeful. We need to put this on the table and address it together. If you're serious about wanting to make this work, we need to establish boundaries. Absolutely, she said, her eyes pleading. I don't want to lose you, Alex. You mean everything to me. Then let's make this work together, but I need to see the commitment in your actions, I replied, trying to keep my resolve steady. I promise I'll show you, she said, her eyes searching mine for sincerity. As we sat there, a fragile truce formed between us, but I couldn't shake the fear that it could all come crashing down again. I wanted to believe in us, to believe that we could heal, but the road ahead was uncertain, and the stakes had never felt higher. The following week was a mix of unease and hope. Sarah started reaching out to her therapist regularly, and I did my best to support her while also focusing on my own healing process. Yet, despite our efforts, a shadow loomed over our relationship, a constant reminder of the betrayal. One evening, after a long day of work, I decided to take a walk to clear my mind. The crisp air felt refreshing against my skin, and for a moment, I thought I could push aside my worries. But as I strolled through the park, I spotted a familiar figure in the distance. It was Sarah, laughing and talking with a group of friends. But there, standing beside her, was that guy, the one who had kissed her. My heart dropped into my stomach, and the familiar wave of anger and betrayal crashed over me. How could she say she was committed to making things work if she was still allowing him into her life? I approached them, my footsteps heavy with dread. As I got closer, Sarah's laughter faded, and her smile vanished when she spotted me. Alex, she exclaimed, her voice a mix of surprise and guilt. Can we talk? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but I felt the storm brewing within me. Of course, she replied, her expression changing to one of concern. I pulled her aside, away from the group, my heart racing. What the hell, Sarah? I thought you were cutting him off. He's just a friend, she said, her voice shaking. But you promised. I shot back, anger rising in my chest. How can you say you're committed to us when you're still hanging out with him? This doesn't feel like you're taking this seriously. I didn't invite him. He just happened to show up, she insisted, desperation evident in her voice. I was trying to be social, to move on. Move on? This isn't moving on, Sarah. This is the exact opposite of what we agreed on. Tears filled her eyes, and I could see the panic rising. I didn't mean for this to happen. I swear. Then why can't you just avoid him? Why are you still putting yourself in these situations? I pressed, my heart pounding. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could show you that I'm okay being around him without it meaning anything. Clearly, you can't handle it. I yelled, my voice echoing in the quiet park. This is why I'm struggling to trust you. You keep testing my limits. I'm sorry. I'm trying, she pleaded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I never wanted to hurt you again. The reality of our situation settled over us like a dark cloud. I felt the weight of our struggles crushing me, and in that moment, I realized I couldn't keep fighting this battle. The trust one had hoped to rebuild felt like it was slipping away again. I can't keep doing this, I said, my voice breaking. I don't know if I can keep trying to make this work when it feels like you're not taking it seriously. Please don't say that, she begged, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away, the ache in my heart raw. I need to think, I said, turning away, the finality of my words hanging heavy in the air. As I walked away from her, I felt like I was leaving a piece of my heart behind. The darkness was closing in, and I knew it was time to face the truth. I had to decide if I could keep fighting for a relationship built on shaky ground, or if it was finally time to let go for good. The road ahead felt uncertain, but deep down, I knew I had to protect myself even if it meant losing the person I once loved. Chapter 8, The Decision. The days that followed my confrontation with Sarah felt like an emotional roller coaster. I spent hours replaying our last argument in my mind, dissecting every word, every glance, trying to figure out where things had gone wrong. Each time I thought about her laughing with that guy, anger and sadness flooded my system. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that clung to me like a heavy cloak. I started talking to Jake more frequently. He was a constant source of support, but his words began to weigh heavily on my conscience. You deserve better, man, he would say. You shouldn't have to fight for someone who doesn't seem ready to fight for you. One evening, as I sat on my bed scrolling through old pictures of Sarah and me, I felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me. There were moments of pure happiness, road trips, anniversaries, silly selfies. How had we gotten here? The weight of our past was suffocating, and I felt torn between the love I still had for her and the anger over her choices. Late that night, I received a text from Sarah. I know we haven't talked much, but I'm really sorry about everything. Can we meet? I need to explain. I stared at the screen, contemplating my response. Part of me was ready to hear her out, to give her another chance, but the other part, a louder voice, was screaming that I deserved better. After a moment of deliberation, I typed back, okay. Let's meet tomorrow. The next day, we chose to meet at the same park where everything had unraveled. As I drove, my stomach churned with anxiety. What if this meeting didn't go as planned? What if I ended up hurt again? When I arrived, Sarah was already there, sitting on the same bench. Her eyes looked puffy from crying, and for a moment, my heart softened. I remembered the good times we had shared and the love that had once been the foundation of our relationship. Hey, I said as I approached. Hi, she replied, her voice trembling. Let's talk, I urged, sitting down beside her. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she started, wiping her eyes. I know I messed up, and I've realized how much I've taken you for granted. I've been selfish, and I didn't consider your feelings. I'm really, truly sorry. Sorry doesn't fix everything, Sarah, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. You keep saying you want to make things right, but it feels like you keep putting yourself in situations that hurt us. I know. I know. I wish I could take it all back, she said, voice thick with emotion. I promise I'll be better. I'll cut him out of my life completely. I've blocked his number and won't see him again. Do you mean it? Because I can't keep doing this if you're not serious, I pressed, my heart racing at the thought of another betrayal. I mean it, she said, her eyes locking onto mine with a desperate intensity. You're my priority. I want us to work. I love you, Alex. I've realized that I can't imagine my life without you. The sincerity in her voice struck a chord within me. I wanted to believe her. But as I searched her eyes, I felt a flicker of doubt. I've said it before, but words only go so far. I need to see actions, I replied, my voice steady. Then I'll show you. I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm committed to our marriage. I'll be transparent about everything, even if it's uncomfortable, she insisted. Transparency means sharing every detail, Sarah. No more secrets, no more hiding things from me. I want to know who you're spending time with. I want to be included in your life, I said, feeling the weight of the past pressing down on me. I can do that. I promise, she said, her voice filled with determination. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension in my chest. And I need to take a step back. I can't keep putting myself in a position to get hurt. If you want this to work, we need to take it slow. Her face fell, and I could see the realization settling in. You mean, you need a break? I mean, I need to protect my heart. I love you, but I can't be in a relationship where I feel constantly betrayed, I said, my voice firm yet gentle. I understand, she replied, her expression a mix of sorrow and acceptance. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to show you that I'm committed to this. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could rebuild, but it would take time. I reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. Let's start fresh, but with clear boundaries. We can work through this, but we have to be honest with each other. She nodded, her eyes glistening. Thank you for giving me another chance. I promise I won't waste it. As we talked, I could feel the walls I'd built around my heart beginning to crack. It wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to try again if only to see if our love could withstand the challenges we faced. After our talk, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. We agreed to take things slowly, to rebuild trust with each small step. I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. Chapter 9, The Road to Healing. The following weeks were a delicate balance of hope and uncertainty. Sarah and I established ground rules to help rebuild our trust. She shared her schedule with me, keeping me updated about her plans, and I tried to remain open and receptive to her changes. I noticed small shifts in her behavior. She made an effort to include me in her life, inviting me to gatherings with her friends and introducing me to people I hadn't met before. The first time I went to one of her friends' get-togethers, I was filled with anxiety, but Sarah's presence was comforting. Throughout the evening, she stayed close, making sure I felt included and valued. When her friends asked about our relationship, she proudly spoke of the progress we'd made, and I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. Yet, there were still moments when doubt crept in. During a dinner party, I noticed a guy from her group lingering a little too long in conversations with her. The familiar pang of jealousy gripped my heart, and I caught myself watching their interactions closely. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked quietly as we stepped outside for some fresh air. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Yeah, just, you know how it is. It's hard to shake off the past." "I get that," she said, her voice soft. "I'll always be honest with you, even if it makes me uncomfortable. You're my priority now." "I know. It just feels like a lot sometimes," I admitted, the weight of my emotions threatening to spill over. "That's okay. We're in this together. If you're feeling uncomfortable, tell me. I'll work on setting clearer boundaries, she reassured me. In the days that followed, we made a conscious effort to communicate more openly. I started sharing my feelings more, and she was receptive, eager to help ease my concerns. It felt good to be heard again, and slowly but surely, I felt a glimmer of the connection we once had. We decided to seek couples therapy as a proactive measure. The therapist helped us navigate our emotions, encouraging us to express our thoughts and feelings without fear of judgment. It was a raw and sometimes painful experience, but I could see the benefit. We were learning to communicate better, to listen more intently, and to understand each other's perspectives. But even as we made strides, shadows of insecurity still loomed. One night, after a particularly intense session, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Sarah turned to me, her voice soft. "Are you still having doubts about us?" I hesitated, weighing my words carefully. "I want to believe that we can get through this, but there are moments when I feel like we're still treading on shaky ground." "That's understandable," she replied, her voice filled with empathy. "I'm working hard to show you that I'm committed, but I know it takes time. I just wish I could take away your doubts." "It's just hard for me to forget," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Every time I think we're on solid ground, something reminds me of what happened." "I know. I can't erase the past, but I can promise you that I'm doing everything I can to make things right. I want to be better for you," she said, her eyes earnest. The next day, I received a text from Jake. "Hey man, are you around? I need to talk to you." A sense of unease washed over me as I replied, "Sure, what's up?" When we met later that evening, Jake's demeanor was serious. "I've been hearing some things about Sarah," he said, his voice low. "What kind of things?" I asked, feeling my heart sink. "I saw her out with that guy again," he said, avoiding my gaze. I didn't want to say anything, but it felt wrong to keep it from you. Anger flared within me.